Welcome to Uncharted. I'm your host, Captain Kelly, and with me today is Joao Franco. Some of you may know him from Below Deck, or some of you may know him like I do, just by chance encounter. But it's an encounter that most definitely left a lasting impression on me. It was a surprise, really, to me when Joao told me he was originally from Zimbabwe. I didn't really think yachties came from Zimbabwe, which that's kind of the same thing people think when I tell them I'm from the cornfields of landlocked Indiana. Joao's story, though, is nothing short of inspiring. Really, I'm not sure that I have the words, as I can't quite comprehend how he has been able to do so much in his 33 years of life on this planet. What I can say, though, is that I walked away the day that I met him saying, that man is nothing short of amazing. An amazing captain, an amazing soul, and an amazing human. And now, Joao is going to share how his uncharted path got him to where he is today. So, welcome.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you for the introduction. That's very sweet.
Yes. So, Zimbabwe.
Yes.
Like, I didn't know yachties came from Zimbabwe.
No, well, it's a landlocked country, which is quite funny, isn't it? It's ironic. I spent a bit of time out of Zimbabwe. Well, actually, when I moved to yachting, to move to Europe, was the first time I ever actually left Africa, and the only bordering countries I'd gone to were Mozambique and South Africa, really.
And so how did you get into the industry?
Literally word of mouth, literally coincidence. I hear it all the time when someone meets someone and they mention this word yachting. And I had two mates of mine come to the house. They had just come from a course because they were chefs, a couple. And they said, no, we're going to use our yachting, use our chef culinary experience in yachting. And I asked what yachting was about. And it just started a snowball effect where I sat in my room for the next 2 weeks trying to figure out what was yachting, how does it work, and whether it's worthwhile. Yeah.
What is it? And that sounds like the exact same thing I said the first time I was invited to an event on a motor yacht, and I walk up to it and I get to the gangway and I'm like, is this what a yacht is? Exactly. I was like, yeah. So, okay. So it's good to know that I'm not the only one that didn't have a clue.
It's so common. And I mean, myself and my brother left together. We were fortunate enough to get on the same charter boat together. We started mid-season. So we were very fortunate, but it came with a lot of persistence, a lot of dock walking, and again, a lot of coincidence.
I can only imagine. So let's go back to Zimbabwe.
Yeah.
I've been very fortunate to grow up in the United States, which I think it's a honorable place, a very safe space. It's a good place to grow up, and I'm aware that it's not like that everywhere else in the world. And I was doing some reading about you, trying to learn more about you after I met you, and learned that you've had a couple wild rides in Zimbabwe. So tell me about what life is like growing up there.
It's, again, I've said this quite a few times to people who ask me, because it is a common question. How did you get into yachting if you're Zimbabwean? And then I give a bit of a background. It's so contrasting. I love Zimbabwe. I always have, always will. It's my pride. It's, it's such a liberal country where you actually grow up naturally, normally, except the contrasting points where, I would say economical strife, you have a lot of political issues and a lot of racism, a lot of things that really contrast what a life could be in Zimbabwe if it wasn't there. So we grew up, myself, my mom, my dad, my brother, small family. We were outside of the main town, and at that stage I was about 12 years old. We started having robberies. The political issues started getting a lot worse, and basically from 12 years onwards on my side, so what was that, 2002, things started getting really hectic, and we decided to move into town. My dad and my mom had split up at the time, so the house, it was, again, a beautiful house, really nice. We weren't very rich, but we had a really nice upbringing in that sense until the political issues had started. And then moved into town. We thought that it would be much better. It turns out it wasn't so much better. Bearing in mind when I was in Zimbabwe, we had 6 robberies in 6 nights in a row, where at one stage I ended up shooting a gun at 12 years old. I ended up actually shooting myself through the arm because I didn't know how to use the gun properly. I tried to unload it and the gun went off in the morning and went through my arm. So that was a bit traumatic for my mom. She thought I'd shot myself in the chest because the blood was everywhere. So that was the first encounter as far as bad situations, and then moved to the suburban areas in Zimbabwe, and it happened again to us. So it wasn't the best situation, but again, it's so hard to describe to people how I still love the country although we've had those issues.
So what started all of this political unrest and these robberies and this, like, it's just something that I can't, naively, maybe ignorantly, whatever you want to call it, can't really fathom. But again, it's because I'm fortunate enough to have grown up here. Now we do have our fair share of issues, riots and dumb stuff like that. So what allowed those robberies and those kinds of things to happen?
It started as a political thing. And again, well, let's say right from the beginning, independence, 1980, it was a very racial thing. And then up until these years, it came up again. It was a racial war mainly, and it caused a lot of. It was very uncomfortable for both parties. There's no denying that. As far as local Africans, we consider ourselves local Africans as well, but we were kind of separated as black and white. And, for the more educated as we were, we didn't see an issue with this, but it's very, unfortunately, a very uneducated country when it comes to upbringing because of lack of resources. And it began like that. And then it shot off from there. And a lot of it was political influence in a major way, where they were almost granted a point where they could take over farms from people because in their sense, their land was theirs, and of course, understandable coming from, decades ago. It just once, like every other country in the world, I would say there is something like this that happens at some stage. So that's what started it. And then poverty for people. People were very poor, and desperate times calls for desperate measures. Again, a very understandable thing because of lack of education, lack of resources, lack of food. People didn't have food, so they took it upon themselves to try and find food. So in actual fact, other than the government itself, you can't blame people, you can't blame anyone. People were starving and people were desperate.
Well, and you do what you got to do when you've got babies to feed, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So one of these instances with the robberies was a pretty scary one with your mom.
Yes.
Yeah. You must be pretty tough. You must be pretty resilient. I mean, you've been through some stuff that I think a lot of us haven't. And so tell me, if you don't mind, what that was like, that instance with your mom, and then the aftermath and how you coped, how you got through it, what your mindset was.
Yeah. But look, again, it was a long time ago, but I remember it very vividly. It was one of those experiences where you can't shake it off. I believe it's like a death. You will never forget. It may somehow get easier by you being able to protect yourself, but it doesn't get easier. And situations like that literally make or break you. And I was 16 years old. We were living in a suburban area, and what initially started with me sitting in the bath, and I'd seen someone look through the window, and I got a bit of a fright, and I was not really, it was kind of caught by surprise. So I moved, and as I moved, they kind of looked at me and disappeared. And that was the start of it. I'd shouted because it was just my mom, my mom's partner at the time. He was there, my brother and myself. And basically, after that incident, I ran outside with a baseball bat. I'd shouted, F off, whatever. I don't know who you are. Get out of here, blah, blah, blah. And then 3 days later, it was a week before my O-level exams, so I'd grabbed my books to study, and I heard my mom scream. I thought it was my mom and my brother playing around, messing around, It sounded like at one stage laughter, and caught off guard. As I walked over, I saw my mom get hit by someone, and she'd fallen to the floor. So I turned around, I ran to get the gun, because in Zimbabwe, everyone has to, it's protection in case of things like this. As soon as I'd managed to put my hand into the vase where the gun was, as I pulled it out, I had a gun to my head. And
oh my God.
They had basically taken the gun from me. They'd thrown me onto the bed. I'd fallen off the bed. And I was dragged. There were 3 guys with guns, dragged into our lounge area. I saw my stepdad getting hit with the butt of a gun. I saw my brother getting hit, and then I saw my mom get hit again, and she collapsed. And I managed to kind of try to run behind her and grab her. They hit me. There was blood everywhere. And then they kind of pulled myself off of my mother, and then they sat me on a kist that we had in the lounge. And I speak very fluent Shona, and I'm one of the very few that do speak the local language fluently. So I got a chance to speak to the guy next to me, asking him, saying, please, my mother's pregnant. She's 2 months pregnant. I think, she was 2 or 3 months pregnant.
Oh, wow.
She's 2 months pregnant. I need to take her to hospital. She's dying. And the guy said, you've got 2 cars. I said, the one car is not working. Please don't take the car that's working. I need to take my mother to hospital. And 2 of them were covered. One was not. He was confident enough to kill, and you could feel it. There was no question about it. And at that age, with what we'd been through already, you could tell. There were people not here to mess around. At least the one guy. The guy next to me, he seemed a bit afraid. They were caught off guard because of my ability to speak Shona. And it's a form of, it's almost an immediate respect, because they see that someone of white guys have attempted to embrace their culture, and it was a very cultural gain of respect immediately. And the guy said, I'm sorry, we can't help you. And I was saying, please. And then the other guy shouted at that guy, saying, stop talking to him, I'll shoot you too. It was hectic. So we realized who was in command, of course. And then the worst part was my mom had put her head, 2 bad parts. She'd kind of been laid to rest against the wall. And then when she slid down, there was just blood all on the wall, and she passed out. And I can't even explain that emotional feeling. Is just second to none. You can't get that out of your head. So, we were dragged towards one of the bathrooms, and then they put my brother, myself, my stepdad into the bathroom and left my mother outside. And that again was the second worst part of it all, because God knows what's going to happen, So I very clearly remember my stepdad saying, if I die now, I'm going. And he grabbed a soapstone, and he grabbed the door, and he pulled the door as hard as he can. One of the guys with the gun dropped on the floor. He basically grabbed my mom's legs. I grabbed my mom's legs, and we dragged her into the bathroom, and kind of picked the other guy up and threw him out of the bathroom and closed the door. So they were a little bit shocked as to what to do as well. It was very scuffly. It was a lot of no one. We didn't just sit down. We didn't just take.
They weren't expecting you to fight back.
No, not at all in that sense, but that was it. That was, it was make or break. And when we pulled my mom in, it must have been about 5 seconds. We tried to open the door. They were still holding the door. Another 5 seconds we opened, and they were gone. We ran outside. We saw them take the car. We just saw the back of the car leaving. I ran next door. We had a judge who lived quite close to us at the time. He had 2 armed guards. I spoke to them in Shona, saying, please come to our house. We've just been robbed. Please speak to the owner of the house. Can they please take my mother to hospital? So, they came, picked her up. I phoned my dad with one of the security guards' phones. Again, bear in mind, phones at that time were hardly usable. You had to have data in your phones, which you had to go to a supermarket to buy. It was a very local, run back in the day, and it was
Wow.
the first house I went to was one of my mates' houses. Their stepmother answered the doorbell, and I said, "Please, we've just been robbed. My mom's on the floor. She needs to go to hospital." And she just put the intercom down, and then I heard her calling someone else to say, "What do I do?" Which again is understandable. I know I would have reacted differently, but I had no time, so I ran to another house and I called them, and phoned my dad. My dad came speeding up. My mom was already taken to hospital with my stepdad, and that was it. The cops came to the house. They made a small report, and done and dusted. My mom got stitches. She was lucky. Everything was okay. She got stitches in the back of the head, and it was just a story for times like this.
Wow. Oh
Yeah.
my gosh.
So,
But there's a lot in this. So did you guys eventually left Zimbabwe?
eventually, it just became hard to deal with. The truth is, there's no such thing as an honest living in Zimbabwe. Everyone's doing something somehow to make something, and the people who are still left there, they have resources. They've worked their way for decades. They've been passed down whatever they have. Those that have made it are very, very fortunate. A lot of coincidence, a lot of luck, of course, a lot of perseverance. Zimbabweans are very tough as a whole. Honestly, they are. And that's what I take pride in as well, But my time was my time. I think I'd outlived Zimbabwe at the time. I will ask my mother today, tomorrow. I asked her I left 8 years ago. I'd asked her 4 years in, and I said, "What can you imagine life if I was still in Zimbabwe?" And she said, "You would have been in jail, or you would have been dead. That's just how it is." So,
Wow.
yeah.
Just wow. This is not what do you say to that? I mean, there's a lot of messages that I think you could share with people that are listening. One is tough, grit, resilience. What did your years in Zimbabwe teach you? How did you, you've been through some ups and downs. Obviously, this is a huge down. How did you get through it? Because, Joao, one of my passions is mental health and inspiring people to live a better life and to put the work in. If you're in a bad place, know that you're not alone.
Absolutely.
So this is obviously had to take you probably, I think, any normal person to a bit of a low. How did you deal with this? What is the conversations you have with yourself to be resilient and so tough?
I never realized how bad things were when they were bad until I got onto the show and I went to America, to be honest. It's kind of inbred in us. I'm not the only one who's been through this. I know families who've been through a lot of that similar form of stories in Zimbabwe and South Africa at the moment, and Mozambique. And the resilience comes without choice. You have no choice. So buckle up, understand that it's not, you have no choice. If you go and make a complaint to the police, well, the police aren't going to help you. They don't have the resources. We called the police and they said they don't have a car to come to us. Can we pick them up, please? So this is the kind of thing that you have to realize, that if you almost have to take it upon yourself to deal with what's going on, because nobody else is going to do it for you. So it's inbuilt to start off with. When I came to America, I remember...
When did you come?
The first time was 2018.
Now, were you already a yachty at this point, or did you come here like on an asylum?
I was 28 years old, yes. I was 2 years into yachting at the time.
Now, when you left Zimbabwe, where did you go? And did you go to the next place on like a political asylum or something like that?
No, so we weren't allowed to travel with money, and I'd done quite well at that time business wise. We weren't allowed to travel with money, so I had what you call Kruger rands, they're gold coins. So I had $200. I took a bag of literally some gold coins in a backpack with my brother, and I sat everyone down at home, and I said, "Right, guys, I'm enough. It's my time. What do you guys want to do?" The guys that were working with me, some were friends, some were not. What do you want to do? We prior to that, well, at that stage, after I'd learned a bit of yachting, for my birthday present, I got everyone the course in South Africa at PYT, and we all went on a 1 month kind of cruise. Went and did our deckhand courses. Came back to Zimbabwe for the guys that were working with me and my brother, and we stayed at least another month, and then we saw things just getting worse and worse. And then I had an altercation with a police officer because he had blamed me for a small car accident when it was absolutely not my fault. He was actually the friend of the person that had crashed into me. So the next day I just said, "I'm absolutely enough. I need to leave. What do you guys want to do?" And my one mate said, "I want to do refrigerated engineering." He was in that already before he had joined me for work. I got him his flights, gave him some money, said, "Go and do what you need to do. Everyone, you're at your own. I'm going to help you to get where you want to go, and I'm out." And I said to who's with me, "You guys can come with me. We can go yachting. We can figure this out." I started in France. I'd never been to Europe. So,
well, did you really know anything about yachting at this point other than some friend talking about yachting?
Money and just go and get a crew house, and you've got your courses. I knew what they told me from courses. Not a hell of a lot, let's be honest, but enough to say, "Okay, I'm done." And it was one of the scariest times of my life because I'd never left Africa.
So you said, "Look, a friend has told me, a mate has told me about this yachting industry. I've done some research. I'm tired of Zimbabwe. I've got some coins. I'm out of here."
That's exactly it. I left 4 days later with my brother.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
I left everything to my mum. I left, we were, again, fortunate enough to make enough in the past 2 years. I built what you call overlanders, RVs for recreational tourism, for client privately. We'd made enough to get out. And 4 days later, my dad actually bought my flight for me because we couldn't buy flights from Zimbabwe. He was in Mozambique. He scraped enough to buy the flights, and we left. We got to the crew house, Debbie's crew house. I think it was on a Monday, and the Tuesday we started dock walking. And that was it.
Wow. Oh my gosh. So, yeah, the name of my podcast is Uncharted, and let me just say, this is definitely Uncharted.
Yeah, honestly, what an experience! It was It was going to Europe and trying to figure out how to get a job. My brother and I were clever as we could be. We dressed up differently. We had our Leathermans on our sides. When we walked up to boats, people thought we were on a boat, so they had to come. They felt obliged to come to us. They didn't know we were deckhands. And we dressed in the same uniform, 2 black shirts, gray shorts, no white, with our shoes. We spent what we could getting really high quality crew uniform so that we looked like crew, and it worked.
Oh my God, how clever is that? That is so clever.
Our first job we had to play Hick Hack Hock for.
Oh wow.
We both walked up together.
Oh my goodness. So then you joined. How long were you in the industry then before you got onto Below Deck? And how did that come about?
So I was a year and a half in the industry as a deckhand, and I was already on my second boat. Yes, and then I was approached on Facebook by a gentleman, Conan Ryan, very pleasant guy. But when he approached me the very day I actually put my CV into YachtSpot. So the very day I started yachting, trying to find a job, he had sent a message. I went through the process up until the very last part, and my brother and I were fortunate enough to get a position together on a 65-meter charter yacht mid-season. So I declined that. I took it seriously, of course, and I declined the show, and I went on to doing actual yachting, because
So how did they hear
actually
about you
didn't
for
want to
the
make a fool
show?
of myself.
So how did they find you? What made them pick you for and reach out to you for the show?
The first thing was based off of the CV from Yacht Spot, and then I think they were quite happy. They liked my confidence, I guess, when they spoke to me on an interview, and I guess a backstory, first Zimbabwean, I
Yeah.
guess, on Below Deck, and it was a few key points that I'd hit during the interview, I guess, and they'd kept in contact for a year and a half, and then I decided, it was again very much coincidence, resigned off of a boat. 2 days later, the gentleman had contacted me again saying, "Hey, do you want to put your name in the hat again?" And I was like, you know what timing? I'm in. Let's do this. Let's make a fool of myself. I'm in.
Oh, impeccable timing.
Yeah,
You're back
absolutely.
again. So maybe I should just give you the chance and do it. So tell me about your time on the show. Tell me about, I mean, do you want to keep going with that? Would you keep going with that? You are a captain now. You're an amazing captain. I just, when I met you and I told you I met you by chance encounter, and I didn't know you were a celebrity. I didn't know you had spent time on Below
I don't see it like that in
Deck.
the yachting industry. Honestly, it's different.
You say that again?
I said I don't see it in the yachting industry. I started as a yachty, and the show was a bonus on my side, as far as a good time and experience. But my career is yachting, so it's definitely not the first thing I'd ever bring up to people. And I think a lot of people are quite surprised by that, because a lot of people do. Hey, by the way, I'm on Below Deck, and I've never been like that. It's not part of who I am.
Well, that's interesting to hear that. So would you ever go back to Below Deck?
Every time I do go back, it's circumstantial. It works as circumstance. The first time I went on was circumstance. The second time it was nearly a no for me, and I went on. I enjoy it. I'm not going to lie. I really do enjoy it. But coming to the position I am in now, it's a fine line between entertainment and career, and it has been a bit of a struggle to get to this position with Below Deck on me, I guess, on my back. But there have been key points that have changed and altered my career for the better because of Below Deck. So again, very contrasting, up and down.
But career for you is being a captain. Yachting is, and being a captain is your career. Now you mentioned, and I'm sure you get asked this all of the time, is yachting like Below Deck? Some yachties don't like Below Deck. I think, from my perspective, Below Deck is great in that, because someone like me and yourself, living in the middle of a country landlocked, never knowing what a yacht is, never knowing that the industry exists, I think it really opens it up to people to understand that there's a whole other world out there. There's a whole other possible career out there. So I really like what Below Deck has done in terms of opening that up to other people. I have no problems with it at all. So, but you tell me, Below Deck having that on your back has been bad, but it has been good. So tell me both, what it's done for you both ways, bad and good.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, there have been, especially American side, opportunities that have come up, which I haven't really taken, me being mainly Europe side. But first of all, I got my first captain's job from Captain Sandy, and I will never take that away from her. She put me in a position, as the best word, uncharted territory. It was, an incredible feeling, but I was more concerned about my ability than she was. And she said to me, "You can do it, so do it." And I was like, if you believe I can, then I will. If I had not had that opportunity, it would have taken me a lot, maybe not a lot longer. I would have eventually got to where I am now, but it would have taken more time to actually realize that I am capable of doing such a position, and I take pride in absorbing, I guess it's from my background as well, only the positive from the people that I have worked for, and literally forgetting about the negative, walking away from it, and trying to grow myself as a captain to literally just be as positive as can be, as understanding as I can be, and I've taken those from Sandy, from Jason. I've met Captain Glenn. These people from my peers, from Colin, who was on the show, who was one of my best mates, from the people who didn't want to work, the people who were there for entertainment. There's so much you can learn from that. So yeah, at the end of the day, that is a massive bonus for me. Being in the limelight, especially after my first season, was a huge wake-up call, because I believe that people saw my confidence as arrogance, and watching myself back, I 100% understand it. I can see it, and I was a little bit ashamed of myself at the time, watching a couple of episodes, and I stopped watching it. And that for me was a wake-up call, more so than any other situation I'd been in back home, because I never got to relive or rewatch who I was. And going to chat to my friends, like, I don't know, some of my best mates, I watched a couple of the episodes, and they were like, yeah, causing shit, hey, blah, blah, blah. And I approached them privately on messages saying, guys, you've never told me that I've been like this. Tell me now, how do you feel about me as a person, And they said, yeah, you can be an absolute dick when you're drunk, and you can cause the most shit when you're drunk, but we know who you are inside, and we tolerate it. And I said to them, why not tell me? Why not inform me? And they said, because you're too hard-headed. The only way that I could figure that out was for myself, and the only way I could figure it out for myself was watching myself back. So that was a huge impact in me. I was still me, but there were parts of me that I was not very happy with, because I didn't know, and ignorance is bliss, so that changed a lot of it. And then going into some of the bad points, getting a job, I have been approached for a couple of jobs. The initial part is, wow, CV's great, amazing, let's go. Hold on, you're on a show. I've had bosses, I've had owners, I've had managers, I've had captains reach out and say, there is a part of the CV that you haven't put in, and I have. I'm not going to mention Below Deck, but it was Motor Yacht Sirocco. It was six weeks of my life, and it was bloody hard. There's no denying that it's not easy, mentally and physically. And, it's also 6 weeks for a reason, because that seventh week, people would be on each other. Like, it's insane. It's such a mental thing. You have to be strong-headed. You have to be thick-skinned. You have to deal with what comes, and you have to find ways to deal with it without letting yourself feel absolutely demoralized and useless. And my key was just to put my phone away. I literally just put my phone away. The only thing that put me in any bad light, except of course CVs every now and then, interviews, was that the negativity came from 0.0005% of the actual viewings of the show. And you hold on to that, and you kind of, you start questioning every part of your life. Am I really like that? And then they nail your family. And that for me was like, I got so defensive. I'd message the producers saying, I'm about to write this message and I don't care what happens. And they're like, please, Rob, don't do it. Take it back. You're better than that. I'm like, yeah, but they're saying stuff about my family, and you boil up, and just that form of patience, that actual mindset that you have to change. It has worked throughout my entire industry to realize that culturally people will say things, people will do things. Culture is such a massive thing on yachts. And I'm only speaking from my experience. And, we had one boat with 13 crew, 12 different nationalities. And you can generalize, of course people do, but there are unique situations that, some people for being, very serious, some people for having banter, and then you have put someone with banter with someone serious. Who's wrong, who's right? Nobody's wrong, nobody's right, but there's a way to tackle it, a way to deal with it. And that for me, learning through Below Deck, learning through my yachting industry, learning on how to say no, how to say yes, how to back myself up rather than put myself down. It's all part and parcel of the show and of yachting. Yeah.
Wow. I think I just could have just said push
Sorry.
play and you could have gone, wow. This
No,
is,
just,
no, Joao, this is some amazing stuff. And I hope that what the people here listening are hearing is, one, that you had your eyes wide open for a mentor when Captain Sandy was there and available and believed in you, which is very much what I saw within the first 30 seconds of standing next to you and talking to you. I had no idea you were a celebrity, but within the first few minutes, my engineer and I are looking at each other going, this guy's good. This guy's young, but this guy's good. You have a confidence about you that some maybe could see as arrogance if they're not confident themselves. If maybe they're missing something internally or needing to work onto something. But I didn't view it as that is all. You were very kind, very confident, literally within 30 seconds, all of that became very clear. And my engineer walked off of I walked off your boat that day going, this guy's going to do well in life. Like you're just awesome. Awesome was the word that we both said. Is this guy's awesome. But you have hit on so many things in here with as far as keeping your eyes wide open for a mentor. Having a mentor, a cheerleader, someone in your corner is so important. And it sounds like Sandy was that when you were doubting yourself and your ability. And she's looking at you going, you've got this, you've got no problem. Like, why are you? So having that in your life, I think is so important. And then what Below Deck has taught you, what the industry has taught you, and you're rattling off some of the things that people may perceive as bad, but I'm sitting here going, Joao, these are nothing but positives.
Yeah.
And you seem to have an ability that I'm proud of and sometimes I have to work really hard to do it, is taking what may be perceived as a negative and turning it into a positive.
Absolutely.
Because all of these moments in an interview not going well, someone turning you down for a job, or even with what happened with your mom and having grown up, in Zimbabwe, you have been able to take all of these things, these what would be negatives, and you've turned them into positives. How much would you say all of these things in your past have made you the man that you are now?
Honestly, I think the biggest thing coming from where I come from, I know I've been teased about saying Zimbabwe 1,000 times, but it literally makes you think. There's no better way to say it than to watch the gap and not the trees. You just watch the gap. Whatever comes at you, if you are looking at the problem, you will be stuck for as long as you can imagine. We've had situations where, I don't know, a mate of mine has lost the e-foil key, and it's a magnetic thing, and the boss is about to come on. All he wants to do is use this e-foil, and he needs to use it. So where's this key? Can't find it, and it's such a small thing. But I'm like, okay, who can make a bracelet? The one guy had some sailing experience. Yes, I can. All right, no worries. I'm Googling. I'm going to find out how to make a key. And they're like, make a key. And all it is a little magnet inside the thing where if you put a little piece of steel in, it starts. It's just a safety mechanism. So I cut an Allen key, found this bracelet. The guy had made a bracelet, put it together. The boss looked at the bracelet like, what is this? Sorry, it's hard to explain, but it works. That's all I can say. It worked. And my crew were like, how did you even think of that? I said, because you guys were sitting there morbid and trying to figure out, how we're going to find the key. I'm like, okay, how are we going to make a key? And I think that's literally what we learn from home is you don't have a choice. So find something to make a solution. Every person in Zimbabwe and most of South Africa that I know the saying, well, we're just going to make a plan. And we make a plan. We've been in situations where, and on this vessel, you've been on board, lost engines, we've lost bow thruster, we've blacked out just before we got onto a dock. Okay, what are we doing? Radioing, making a plan, do something, figure it out, because in those situations, you need to find something to do, because one thing, as you know, on a boat is that it is always moving. It's not like a car. You can't just stop and say, okay, right, this is it. Thank you very much. I've been caught in really bad weather, and it's one of my worst times of my life. And that when it hit me, okay, I am responsible for the crew on board. how do I get out of this? Because I have to. I have no choice. I have to. And it was a situation based where I said yes under peer pressure. I will never do that again. But we got out safe. I literally docked the boat, burst into tears without anyone seeing, went to my room, stayed there for 2 days, came out, said, right, guys, what do we do? So, you know what I mean? I think it's based back to your question of how our background changes us to make us who we are is mainly that. And our pride for what we've gone through, as a pride for our family and pride for how we've accomplished in some of the worst case scenarios, to get to where we are.
Would you change any of it?
No, absolutely not. There's nothing I would change. I can't say I would change absolutely anything from my life. Not at all. And it's sometimes you can try and figure out where you'd be, how you'd be if you had changed something. I would have invested into Bitcoin 10 years ago. But
Me too.
No.
me
Of
too.
course,
Me too.
yeah, absolutely.
But
That's the only thing I could possibly say I would change.
But I think it's, and even when you going back to when you saw yourself on Below Deck and you were like, oh, that's not how I want to be. That takes a lot of courage. That takes a lot of courage to look at yourself and go, that's not who I want to be. And you know what? I'm going to change it. Yeah. And if anybody can take anything away from listening to this most amazing episode is that if you're going through something, a low point, it's these low points in life that we need to learn, that we need in order to grow, and will ultimately get us to where we need to be, want to be, should be. Embrace them. Embrace what you're learning at the time. Embrace what positives you can take away from it. Flip the script is what I say. Flip the script. Turn that negative into a positive. Learn from it. And Joe, you just have such an amazing story. Like such resilience, such grit, such determination, and I just you're really leaving me speechless. And as you know, speechless is not a way that I am normally left. I have no shortage of words at all. This is amazing for anybody that might be struggling to know that just to look at you and just to hear you, like you're such strength. You're just
Thank you very much, but so are you. And this is what I want to point out. You don't realize, and I had to learn the hard way. I stopped talking about myself and my problems, and I started listening. And it sounds like, oh my gosh, oh really, is that what you did? Honestly, I did, because my worst case scenario in my mind can be far worse in my mind than someone else's worst case scenario. But here's the thing: I have 2 eyes, I've got a nose, I've got a mouth, I can speak, I can hear, I've got 2 hands, I would never replace anything I've ever been through, okay, to literally lose a limb or to literally be able to I experience everything with absolute gratitude, because we are, no matter what we've been through, still here, still have a job, still have a life, still have people that care about us. We have everything that is simply what we need in life, honestly. And that's the biggest thing. We have everything. We have everything we could possibly imagine. I can't remember the last time, except for a Lamborghini maybe, where I was like, I can't go in a shop and buy a meal or buy something. And that I never take for granted, because we're lucky. We're so lucky. And that's why I'd never replace anything in my life for what I still have today. And wow. I believe the same as you. As you said, you come from the cornfields, and somehow every path of life that we've all been through, it gets us literally right here where we are. We're sitting here talking. We both, and I appreciate you've also had your hardships, and same as Captain Sandy, when we're talking about how the industry is not diverse, or however it's more difficult. It has been. It's getting easier. I don't know. I'm not in your position, but you've had to go through everything you've had to go through to get to where you are, and I could never experience that. I could never imagine it, and that's the key, is to embrace what you've been through, listen to what other people have been through, and again, going back to the pack, find a mentor. Don't be afraid to be a suck up, because honestly, I was called brown nosing 1,000 times. Why? I asked every single question I wanted to when I wanted to, and that's, everyone's been through something. So I don't see my life any far different from anyone who's sitting where I am as well.
Wow. Oh my God. There's just so many messages in this episode. I mean, we're definitely going to have to do a part 2. But Joao, I got to say, you're amazing. You're inspiring. I said it the day that I met you within 30 seconds. I said it the day to my engineer. We both said it when we walked off of your boat, and I still feel it. And even more so now. I had no idea that this conversation was going to be this. I've got goosebumps right now. I really do. I mean, just thank you so much for sharing your story, because
I really appreciate getting to speak out and help where I can. It's something that I take pride in. We try and help everyone we can. So yeah.
Absolutely. And even though I can't put into words and I can't summarize this, everything that you have said today is just, you have left me speechless, and that never happens. Just thank you so much for sharing. It's really been a joy to have you on here, and for you to share your. Well, I know. When do I see you again?
We're in Italy at the moment, and we'll be here. We're traveling the whole of the Mediterranean this season, which will be fantastic. We've got an incredible crew, and we'll be around, I guess, on the water.
Actually, you know what? I'll be over to Marina Genova.
Okay,
in
awesome.
April at the CU Charter Show. They've actually asked me to come over and speak.
Amazing.
So I will be over there. So I'll have to see if I can't figure out where you are.
Yeah.
I'm not going to come so far across the pond and not enjoy a couple of days. So I'll have to look you up when I'm there.
Absolutely. Cool.
Awesome.
Right.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, guys. All right. Take care.